Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back, it's Jordan here. Today we're going to be working on the Lego City train yard. We've been meaning to work on this project for quite some time, and we finally have the parts to work on the train yard, the harbor, and the surrounding area. But the first thing that I need to do before even considering starting that project is actually upgrade one of my original mocks. This is like an OG train engine shed that has been kicking around for probably like 6 or 7 years, and it's been like tossed around, beat up. Yeah, it just needs an upgrade. So yeah, that's one of my OG mocks there. It uses black brick, blue, and then like that light blue color, and then there's a lot of the dark gray masonry bricks built into it as well. Got some dark gray masonry on like the triangular portion of the roof there, and this is actually just held in by gravity, so we can remove these roof panels like so. There's a cross beam that provides support for the roof in the midsection, but there's no interior details. It's not placed down on a Mills plate or anything like that. So I'm pretty sure before we even consider starting on the train yard project, we've got to upgrade this old school train engine shed. So let's get started. Of course, the design that we come up with here has to use the parts that we have in our inventory. So we're using some interesting colors. We're going with dark gray for the foundation, and that's actually 2 studs wide there. It's a combination of masonry bricks and also just standard brick. And then we have an interior color of the reddish brown. And then around the windows, there's nougat, and we decided to use the black windows. You will notice that the window design is inconsistent. That's just because we don't have enough parts to make it consistent at this time. But we are going to run with this here. So we have the taller windows on the bottom, then the shorter windows, and they have the curved element on top. And those are framed with the nougat arches, which are 1x6. And the supports for those arches are the masonry bricks. Now I did lift the windows up 2 plates. So there's a black plate on the bottom, and there's also a 1x6 plate on the bottom. And on the foreground, there is a row of brackets, and that's how we're able to add that decoration, which is consistently colored with the window, like the nougat 1x4 plate, also the 1x4 tile, and the cheese slopes on either side. So I think that just frames the windows nicely. And then, of course, there's the cheese slopes in front of the windows as well. So we actually have 4 windows on this side. For the most part, they're evenly spaced. It goes 2 studs of gray there, then 5 studs, 6 studs, 6 studs, 6 studs, 5 studs. So they're evenly distributed on the side walls. And then we have the reddish brown walls between the windows, which are actually jumpered in place, and they're topped with the light detail there. We did decide to jumper these in place here just because that insets them half a stud, and I think it adds an interesting texture to the exterior of the model. I just think that's better, but we have to realign it up top here with more jumpers, and we're getting ready to frame this whole wall using more reddish brown brick. I think the colors really work well together. I'm happy that we have the strange reddish brown elements like the profile bricks, the palisade ones, and also the masonry bricks. Like that just really works out. And of course it's the same on the back and on the sides. You can see that this thing is quite large, and there's only 1 track within. So we could add 1 or 2 tracks, but we're thinking if there's 2 tracks in there, it's not going to leave a whole lot of space for detail. So we're just going to make it a single track train engine shed. Could we change that in the future? Maybe. So we laid down one of our ballast tracks there. So I decided to Mills plate around it. So I got 1 section of Mills plating done on that side there, and I'm just starting to work on this section of Mills plating as well. I think that elevates the floor to a good height above the train track, so it's sort of like a subfloor. But you can see the size of this thing. We're gonna have a lot of space for interesting mini builds within, so it's pretty good. What would you do? Would it 1 track or 2 tracks? We are leaning toward 1 just because that leaves a whole bunch of open space in there so we can add mini builds all around. I just think it gives us more flexibility to experiment with interesting little mini builds rather than just cluttering it with 2 train tracks. This model is quite large. At this point, it's 32 studs wide by 56 studs long. We didn't build it on base plates, rather 16x16s and also some 8x8s in the back there. And if we choose, we'll be able to put this right into a Mills plate. I wanted it to be modular in the sense that it can float around and be placed anywhere on top of a Mills plate. And now we're getting ready to move on to the next stage, which is the upper portions of the walls. Before we continue with this awesome Lego train shed build, just wanted to let you know about my next Whatnot stream. Thank you so much, Whatnot, for sponsoring this video. So my stream, it's going down on August 15th, which is a Friday, and it starts at 2 o'clock Mountain Time. Pretty exciting times because that means Mrs. Bricksie is going to be there. And during that show, we're actually going to be cracking all 4 cases of these CMFs, which are sealed. We're going to dump them into a big bin live, and we're going to do something called CMF Rip and Ship. $1 auction starts for all of these awesome CMFs. Should be pretty fun. Plus, we're going to have a bunch of sets that we're going to be auctioning off as well. And I don't know what we're giving away yet. I've got to go to the Lego store and buy some of the new sets, so we'll give some of those away. Plan on doing that tomorrow. So I haven't really decided yet. But if you're not on Whatnot, you can join using my affiliate link, which is in the pinned comment and description below. And when you join using that link and make your first purchase during one of my streams, you get a free gift with purchase, which during this stream here, it's going to be random CMFs. I hope to see you there. Should be a lot of fun. All right, let's get back to the build. The next layers of brick are just the reddish brown brick that go on top of the little midsections that were held in place by the jumpers, and also the jumpers on top of the windows. Unfortunately, the only jumpers that we have in Nougat are right here in this bin. Not a great deal of them. I would love to have more of those because then we could change the jumpers on top of the arches to Nougat, but just something that we're going to have to substitute in the future because that would just make it look so much better. So yeah, we did 2 layers of the reddish brown and then covered the entire wall all the way along with 1x2 dark bluish gray jumpers. That allowed us to put this plate going from the pillar all the way across the top, connecting to the other pillar, and that's a 2x plate. And then we did 2x brick all the way along, mixing in some masonry bricks, and then we topped that with more 2x plate. So that sort of frames the wall nicely because we have dark gray here, dark gray on the bottom, and also dark gray on top of the reddish brown. And that's what the backside looks like. I wanted to keep this consistent with the original model, which is right over here, right? But it looks like I've got a lot more parts in our inventory. I remember back in the day, we weren't working with much, so I swapped out all those 1x2 slopes with 1x4s, or 2x4s in this case here, so that it doesn't have to be as tall and we can still have that nice sloped effect. But yeah, we decided to make the whole back wall dark gray. And of course, by back wall, I mean the upper portion of it, and you can see I actually carried over the masonry brick in the interior as well, so that's 2 studs wide. So we could have masonry bricks facing inside, and I did that along the top here as well, just add some nice detail. The Mills plate is fully constructed now and started laying down some tiles. The interior tiles are just 1x2 dark grays, and then we're going to do it in light gray just to break up some of the dark gray color a little bit there. I did 2 rows, but we've got to install some mini builds before I continue tiling just to make sure we have studs available for the mini builds. And I did the same thing on this side here. And you can see at the end of the train track, there is a train stop. So something the locomotives can roll up to and be cushioned, I guess, by it, right? But yeah, I think the interior is looking pretty sweet. Once we get some pops of color in here with mini builds, it'll look a lot better. Now I did create this beam here, and the beam is only 30 studs, so it goes in the interior studs and stretches across, and of course I use Technic elements and pin them together. I put some brackets on the bottom so that we could add light, and if you look on the bottom of the beam, there is some more trans yellow elements to represent more light, and then I put some of these taller slopes here and also a pillar and a 2x8 plate stretching across because that's going to support the roof, because there is a larger beam that will stretch from end to end and be supported in the middle by that. Similar to the old design, I thought it was a good design and it worked, and it was very strong, so decided to stick with that. Now I did leave the Technic elements exposed there. Sort of gives it like an industrial look. There is a way that I can clean that up just by running plate on these brackets, and then I could tile it off, but I sort of like the Technic holes. Another thing I could do is just put the blue pins in there and put some plates down and then tile or tiles down and tidy that up. So there's definitely ways to tidy up the Technic beam, but I don't think it's too bad. Now we had those big curved slopes in the front of the model. We decided to build some walls on either side, put a door right here. Unfortunately, there's not enough studs on the side to carry over the same design with the nougat arch, and we don't have any reddish brown arches. So for now, we just used a regular door with the, door frame, and then a fancy door, and the small black windows above because we got to swap out some windows. And I framed that with reddish brown, put the light above, and on this side here, just like framed a clock, but we're missing one of the curved tiles there. And these lights are a little bit higher just because they have to accommodate that door. And I thought this would be funny, you know, put a little bell here that hangs down a little bit. Clearance, maybe it tickles the top of the train as it goes in. I wanted to raise it up one more stud, but my beam goes right here, and the beam has to be fully supported by the 2 bricks. But yeah, we've got the 2x4s here. This is just a nice grade. Looks like I need to flip around one of my masonry bricks there. Sorry about that. And the beam is actually right here, and this is the center section of the roof, which is fully tiled off. And we have some heat exhaust there, or just ventilation. And the bottom side of it is where you can see the beam, which is built using Technic bricks, and they're all pinned together. And it's topped by 8x black plate, and on the outermost edge of it on either side there's a strip of 1x plate and also the 1x rail plates on either side. So now when we install this, it's going to fill in that gap there and just act as a nice central support structure for our roof. And these are the side panels that would go on the side at an angle. Fully tiled off, and you can see I altered the pattern, so it goes 1x4, 1x6, 1x4, 1x6, all the way along. Yeah, it uses a lot of tile, and I built it using, for the most part, 8x6 plates. And this is, of course, 4 studs shorter than the full length of our train engine shed, which was 56, so it's 52 studs long, and this is actually going to slot in place like that. But you will notice that these tiles actually overhang 1 stud. So the top is actually not, 13 studs wide, and that just fits in there perfectly, but it does require 2 hands just to sandwich it between the 2x4 slopes on either side. And with those installed, they're pretty much flush with the slopes on the front and back. And they actually rest on the modified rail plates along the central roof there. And then with the extended tile, they're long enough to cover up the exposed studs on top of those dark gray bricks. And we decided to go with black. I was experimenting with dark gray, but it ended up being very monotone. And I actually think black was the right decision because we had enough tiles to give it that interesting pattern. And also it sort of matches the accent color of this building because the doors, windows, and light fixtures are black. And then of course I topped it with a 2x2 jumper right here so we could add that little accent as well, or a little decoration there. So now that I showed you how to assemble the roof, I got to take it apart so I can add more interior details. When you come in the front entrance, we got some protective equipment there, such as the hard hats and also some fire retardant pants. I want to change those, hey? There's a little radio on the wall there as well. So I had to modify the walls just to add some modified bricks with the forward-facing studs. Then I could mount those 3x4 plates, which are usually used to pose minifigures, but we put some connecting pieces on there so that we can actually put some tools up on the tool rack there. There's a crate on the ground that I built using some brackets and some tiles, and that's where the extra wheels can be found for the trains. Then we have some inspired tools from the other train shed, which is currently in the train yard. That is a drill press right there, put a little bucket beside it. There's also a workbench right there that has a clamp and a oversized fire extinguisher in the corner. So that's all the details on that side. And there's still lots of room. We could add even more. On the opposite side, we have a computer desk where there is a computer, of course, a couple drawers there. I built that with modified bricks like the headlight bricks. Also some of the modified 2x2 plates to put the drawers on, which are just 1x2 jumpers. Topped it with a dark brown plate, added a cup of coffee, of course, and then we have a tool bench here, which is held in place by some of those modified tiles. And then a can of CO2, or just air tanks, I guess, right? And those were inspired by the other train shed as well. This is just classic. I figured I'd throw some of these drawer units in here. Just classics, right? And that's where the coffee machine is, along with some unopened mail and also a map of the surrounding area. And then we have an epic mini build of a lathe, which is just awesome. I figured we would include a lathe in this train shed as well. So yeah, there's still lots of open space, but I feel like having the single train track in there gives us lots of walking space for minifigures, and also it allows us to space out all of these awesome mini builds. Now there is one detail that we are missing at this particular time, and that is a door. I wanted to add a rolling garage door. I couldn't figure out the logistics of that just because there's not a whole lot of clearance for trains already. I didn't want to make the roof too tall. So I think a barn door style door would work better, one that slides from side to side, or one that just hinges open. I'm probably going to leave it open at all times just so you can get in there and see all the details. So at this time, I'm not installing a door. I know that's not authentic, but I don't know if it's necessary right now. I'll probably modify that in the future though. But there we go. That is the new and improved train engine shed. A pretty big improvement from the old, that's for sure. So now what about the placement of this train shed? I know it's going to go right here, but we're going to have to move it over because you can see this is only 9 studs and this is more than 9 studs. So I didn't build it in a way that it aligns with this train track here. But I was thinking to myself, what we could do is actually have this turn happen earlier, like back here. And that is going to increase the amount of straight track that we have right here. And then we can try and center this train engine shed in this giant space. Now, one thing that this model is missing is, of course, exterior details. There's no cool exterior details like this one over here. But this one is significantly larger, and we can just add those exterior details to the exterior of it, just in the surrounding area. For example, there's no stairs leading up to the front door. That's a pretty big step, but we can always add those things when we go about placing it here in the train yard. I don't think I'm gonna have time for that today, but I do want to try and loosely fit it in this area, so I've got to remove some stuff. Something along the lines of that there. I actually just removed one of the straight tracks from over here, so it brought it that way a bit, and that actually gives us enough space to throw another switch in over here if we wanted to, and then we could bring another line right there beside the train shed. But that might make it a little bit too crowded. I'm thinking just some nice vegetation or something there. Now I know the train yard is looking awfully green right now, but as mentioned at the beginning of this video, I just didn't feel comfortable making upgrades to the train yard with that train shed there. It just didn't look good, that one being the blue one, of course. And this actually has enough space, the train shed that is, to host a couple wagons and have a locomotive sticking out of the front. So I think that really works out nicely. But yeah, there we go, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. Pretty epic, been meaning to take care of this project for a very long time, and it definitely feels pretty good to get it done today. Thank you so much for coming on by. Please remember to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for some more great stuff. Farewell.